Hi everyone, my name's David Stein. Thanks for joining today's Summit presentation. Today I'm going to talk to you about how AWS can help you migrate your file storage into fully managed file store offerings. Many customers have on-premise file storage that they want to get out of having to maintain in order to improve agility and reduce cost. AWS's suite of fully managed file store offerings and data transfer services can help you simplify and migrate your file data to transform your infrastructure with storage solutions that provide the flexibility to integrate with your existing environments with the added AWS cloud benefits of agility, performance, security, and scalability. For the agenda today, we'll start with discussing how you can accelerate your journey to the cloud with AWS file storage solutions. We'll then provide an overview of our different managed cloud file offerings, and then we'll wrap up with a discussion on how to best migrate your file storage to AWS. Please also check out our related breakouts, including storage cost optimization for Amazon S3 and EBS, how to move your desktop and applications to our end user computing on AWS, also using container and serverless to accelerate application development, and then build a migration factory with Cloud Endor and AWS Migration Hub. Customers tell us that managing their on-premises storage comes with a unique set of challenges. Network-attached file storage arrays hold all of the data for a vast array of applications, and they need to be sized properly to hold all of the data for the next 3 to 5 years. And as that data continues to grow, so does the infrastructure, including the infrastructure cost, including all the hardware, software, networking, data center costs, as well as backup and disaster recovery infrastructure. On-premises is also limited to your immediate capacity. So this not only affects the amount of data you can store, but it also affects the amount of compute that can access the data. If the storage can't keep up, your applications or end users won't be able to either. And then finally, managing your on-premise file storage comes with the challenge of keeping it up and running. This includes all the operational overhead of having to replace failed hardware components, keep your software patched and updated, as well as managing your own security and encryption. AWS provides a full suite of offerings that we generally compartmentalize into 2 different buckets. We have general purpose file storage, which is represented by our Amazon Elastic File System Service, or EFS, which is designed for Linux workloads, and then also Amazon FSx for Windows File Server, which is our fully managed SMB offering built on Windows Server, which can be accessible from Windows and Linux offerings. Windows and Linux operating systems. This is great for general application servers and user shares. We also have Amazon FSx for Lustre, which is designed for high-performance applications where you need very high levels of throughput and low latency with native integration with S3. We'll be focusing more on EFS and FSx for Windows today. When moving to AWS, you already have the benefit of not having to manage the hardware. This means you don't have to procure and set up the hardware, and that means the servers and storage. You don't have to invest the CapEx, and you don't have to work on detecting and addressing hardware failures and keeping everything up and running. However, when it comes to file storage, customers are also asking how we can help with managing their file infrastructure. This includes installing and setting up your file servers, managing the storage volumes behind that, performing operational things like backup and encryption, as well as maintaining software licenses and performing software updates. And here's where fully managed cloud offerings like EFS and FSx for Windows help. We provide all of the hardware infrastructure and management, and we also set up and manage all of the software infrastructure as well. So all you have to do with a few easy clicks in the console is tell us how much capacity and throughput and performance you want, set up a backup schedule, and you have a fully managed cloud file offering for Linux and Windows workloads. With Amazon Elastic File System, it's fully elastic, so you don't actually have to provision anything with EFS. You put data in and it grows with you. It's also scalable, meaning that as you add data, it'll continue to grow without you having to add additional storage. It's highly reliable. It's built on multiple availability zones within a region, which makes it super durable. So your servers can access the EFS file system in any availability zone without you having to do anything. And then finally, it's also cost effective. We have an infrequent access tier, so you can automatically lifecycle your data down into cold storage. And what we find is that most customers' data, typically 80% is cold, with the remaining 20% being more frequently accessed, needing higher performance. With Amazon EFS lifecycle policies and Amazon EFS infrequent access tier, Using that 80-20 rule, we find that most customers pay an effective rate of just 8 cents per gigabyte per month. And then for Windows-based workloads, at Amazon FSx for Windows File Server, it's built on a Windows operating system, so you get all the features and functionality you would expect from a Windows file share. It's offered in multi-AZ and single AZ for a wide variety of durability and cost and performance options. And then it also supports workloads like SQL clustering, so you get high performance, or you could support user shares and other types of general purpose environments with our HDD type storage tiers. If we look at the use cases that customers use our file offerings for, they range from user shares and home directories to application servers that need shared file storage. User shares and home directories also include things like team shares and department shares. We might have a department like your marketing or finance that needs to create a team share to share files and folders in between different users. And this is supported by Mac and Windows instances. And then we also have application servers, which we support Linux and Windows servers. And this ranges from production type applications like e-discovery, content management. We also see web serving environments, as well as test dev environments, analytics types workflows. And then we also see things like databases, for example, SQL servers on the FSx for Windows File Server, and then also things like backup environments. This includes backing up your on-premises environment to AWS, as well as backing up things like your SQL environments within AWS, where you need to point to an NFS or SMB share. And as always, security is a top priority at AWS. With all of our file offerings, we offer encryption at rest and in transit. We offer POSIX permissions through NFS and SMB and NTFS permissions and Windows ACLs, Active Directory integration. We support network control access through VPC. We support resource level permissions through IAM. We also support multiple compliance type protocols such as PCI, SOC compliance, and we're HIPAA eligible. Now, I want to go a little bit deeper into Amazon FSx for Windows File Server and EFS. Let's start with FSx, which is our lowest cost file storage in the cloud for Windows workloads. When you provision an FSx file system, first and foremost, you can integrate it directly with your own Active Directory. So this means that you can default to all of the authentication for your users that you already have in your existing Active Directory environment. So there's no need to recreate the wheel. You can optionally choose to use our own managed Active Directory. But for customers that choose to set up and connect to their own corporate Active Directory, which could be hosted in AWS on an EC2 instance, or it could be hosted on premises, it makes it easier to lift and shift over to AWS on FSx by keeping all the permissions that you have. And we can also integrate natively with your existing DFS namespace servers, which gives you a single global namespace that you can easily attach an FSx instance to easily expand your file environment into the cloud. Amazon FSx provides multiple options for availability and durability. When you're provisioning an FSx for Windows file system, you'll have options to create a single AZ or multi-AZ file system. With single AZ, it's still highly durable within an AZ, meaning we replicate the storage as well as the filers behind the scenes. So we can fail over and perform and provide high durability to you without you having to do anything. Customers looking for additional levels of availability can also choose to deploy multi-AZ, where in addition to the durability within a single AZ, we'll set up another FSx file system in a different availability zone. We'll handle all the replication, failover, and failback. And again, that's also completely transparent to you. The replication is synchronous, so you can ensure there's no data loss, and there's nothing you have to do on your part. It's simply a checkbox option when you provision an FSx file system. From durability, we offer a couple different ways to achieve durability with your FSx file system. First and foremost, we have snapshots, which are available local to the file system using Microsoft's Volume Shadow Copy service. This is incremental point-in-time copies that allow you to set policies for users to restore individual files and folders. And then we also support full backups to S3 using Amazon FSx backups. Since FSx backups are stored on S3, you get the full 11 nines of durability that S3 offers. You're able to restore backups into any availability zone. And this is usually designed for long-term compliance and archiving. So typically we'll see customers use the volume shadow copy service with the snapshots for short-term file and folder recovery, usually for a few weeks to a month, and then FSx backups for long-term backup and archive and compliance purposes, where you need to keep copies of your data for several years. From a price standpoint, I've already mentioned that Amazon FSx provides the lowest cost file storage in the cloud for Windows workloads. Our prices start at just 1.3 cents per gigabyte per month for our single AZ HDD offering. And then we get a secondary copy with multi-AZ for 2.5 cents per gigabyte per month. So for less than twice the cost, you get twice the amount of storage with all of the replication, failover, and failback built in. And then for high performance workloads, for things like analytics workflows, media processing, and application servers and SQL servers where you need high performance and IOPS, we provide an SSD offering. And that's at 13 cents per gig with our US pricing, and then 23 cents per gig for the multi-AZ offering. And keep in mind, you can also take advantage of data deduplication to store more data and reduce your overall cost. Meaning that if you had 10 terabytes of storage and you can get 50% data deduplication, you only need to provision a 5 terabyte volume, effectively cutting your rate in half. So this 1.3 cents per gigabyte per month, the effective rate can easily be under a penny per gigabyte per month for applications and user shares where you can get good data deduplication rates. We also support storage scaling and throughput resizing. So as your application and user shares grow in size and you need to add more storage, you could easily scale up your environment without having to worry about all the complexities of adding on additional hardware on premises or dealing with the limitations of your immediate available capacity. This makes it easy to scale your application as you grow without having to over-provision. And then on the throughput side, you can adjust your throughput up and down at any point. So this allows you to create higher throughput file systems when you're first migrating, and then fine-tune the amount of throughput you need as your data or as your implementation matures, and you're able to fine-tune exactly how much throughput you need. It also helps customers who know they're going to have high levels of performance coming for certain periods of the month or year, and they want to be able to fine-tune their application to adjust to that. And then lastly, we talked about user shares and application servers. I briefly mentioned SQL servers as well. And what we mean by supporting SQL workflows is with our multi-AZ offering, we support a feature called continuous availability shares, which allows you to create SQL HA clusters using always-on failover clustering. Customers often run failover clusters in their on-premises environments to support highly available SQL environments, where if a node fails, a secondary node is able to connect to the file share, and then with no disruption to your applications or your databases. With FSx multi-AZ file systems, we provide continuous access, and we also provide high performance and low latency that SQL applications demand, enabling you to easily migrate your applications and your SQL servers over to AWS while continuing to operate with the same type of high availability model and using the same SQL licensing that you have on premises today. Now, let's move on to Amazon Elastic File System. So you heard me earlier talk about Amazon Elastic File System being a fully elastic file system that you don't have to provision storage for, that's highly durable and offers cost-effective storage tiers. What we find is that customers use this a lot for migrations from on-premises using NFS shares, but we also see that a lot of companies are also containerizing their applications, and they need to be able to provide persistent storage for those containers. And those containers are typically Linux environments. And that's either because the applications are running for long enough periods of time that they need to have persistence for availability, or because they need to scale out around a shared data set. For example, developer tools like Jira or content management systems like Drupal or WordPress need persistence to achieve high availability through an active standby model, often across AWS availability zones, and can take advantage of a persistent storage that they're able to easily detach and attach from. And then you have other applications like machine learning, analytics, places where you have data scientists that use common shared data sets that they need to be able to attach lots of different end user systems to with a shared data set underneath. And EFS helps provide an NFS mount point to easily accommodate this and be able to scale out their applications quickly. And AWS is the place companies love to run their containers. And that's for three primary reasons. One, AWS has all the necessary capabilities around security, reliability, and scalability that are needed for highly available production applications. Second, with serverless technologies like AWS Fargate, AWS allows developers to focus on their applications without having to worry about all of the underlying infrastructure. And then last, AWS has the broadest ecosystem of tools and orchestrators to ensure it supports a wide variety of use cases and development environments. We recently announced native integration between ECS, our Elastic Container Service, and EFS, which provides a couple different things that you couldn't easily do before. One is simplicity. So now you can configure EFS inside your ECS task definition, so you no longer have to worry about what happens under the hood. So this really simplifies your deployment. Second, you can use EFS from AWS Fargate, which is great for serverless containers. So now you have persistence for serverless containers. And then lastly, we've added new security capabilities, namely the ability to use IAM to authorize access to your file system based on your task role and control access to your EFS access points. So when you look at the overall benefits of ECS and EFS working together, it really gives you two kind of things. One is availability and durability. And this is because both EFS and ECS are region services. So what this means is you can easily deploy ECS in any availability zone. And because EFS is automatically replicated between multiple AZs within a region, that any ECS container in any AZ will have access to the same underlying data set. There's nothing you have to do. EFS already has the data in the availability zone that your ECS container is spun up in and can access it. So it really simplifies your operations and allows you to create servers in any availability zone without having to worry about where the storage is. Secondly is elasticity. So it should be of no surprise that Elastic Container Service, ECS, and Elastic File System, EFS, both have Elastic at the name. So this means that as your applications need to scale out, the combination of services instantly provides additional compute and storage capacity, meaning you pay for what you use and you don't need to forecast usage, over provision, or get slowed down when you run out of capacity. So now that we've talked about our primary general purpose file systems, Amazon Elastic File System, or EFS, and Amazon FSx for Windows File Server, let's look into the tools to help migrate your data into AWS. So if we look at our data transfer and edge computing services, there's three primary products. One is our storage gateway family, which includes our file gateway, which provides NFS and SMB interfaces to on-premises. You deploy a virtual machine on premises that provides a gateway and a local cache to store data into S3. Customers use this to get data into S3 to take advantage of analytics and services such as Athena, Redshift Spectrum, EMR to provide big data processing, machine learning, and then present that data back on premises through a standard industry standard file protocol. Another use case is putting backup and archive data into AWS and still being able to present that on premises through a file protocol. Secondly, we have AWS DataSync. AWS DataSync makes it simple and fast to move large amounts of data online between on-premises and Amazon S3, Amazon EFS, and Amazon FSx for Windows File Server. And then lastly, we have our Snow family of products. Our Snow family of products provides physical hardware that we could ship to your data center that you can load data on and then transport it back to AWS, as well as provide some edge computing, which is great for locations that have poor internet connectivity that need some compute processing, and you need to be able to ship that data back to AWS. Let's dive a little bit deeper into AWS DataSync, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the Snow family. So AWS DataSync makes it easy to move large amounts of data between on-premises and S3, EFS, and FSx. DataSync can transfer hundreds of terabytes of data and millions of files up to speeds 10 times faster than common open source tools. Manual tasks related to migrations can slow down migrations and burden IT operations. And what DataSync does is it eliminates many of the tasks, including your scripting your copy jobs, scheduling and monitoring transfers, validating data, and optimizing network utilization. You could use DataSync to migrate active data sets or archives to AWS, transfer data to the cloud for timely analysis and processing, or replicate data to AWS for business continuity. You can also use it to replicate data between regions in the example of something like FSX for Windows File Server. Getting started with DataSync is easy. You deploy the DataSync agent on premises in a virtual machine, connect it to your file system, and then select your AWS storage resources and start moving data between them. After hearing from our customers about some of the challenges they were facing with trying to transfer data into AWS, we realized there was an opportunity by removing a lot of the undifferentiated heavy lifting that comes with building their own migration tools. And AWS DataSync really helps with that. Performance is critical, so we do this in a parallelized fashion that moves data faster than you'd be able to do it on premises. We want to make it easy to set up and without having to do the manual task. We also want to make it secure so that we handle in-flight encryption and support encryption at rest for S3 and EFS, and provide a number of opportunities to validate your data, making sure that all of your data was transferred successfully. We also wanted to integrate with common management tools such as CloudWatch, CloudTrail, and IAM. And then lastly, it was designed to be cost-effective. There are third-party offerings on the market today that offer many of the features in DataSync, but they come at a significantly higher price point. Now, looking at the AWS Snow Family, so DataSync is a great way to transfer data over, but for situations where you need to move bulk sets of data, hundreds of terabytes and petabytes of data, the Snow Family provides both physical transport devices as well as edge infrastructure and software to move data processing and analysis as close as necessary to where it's created in order to deliver intelligent, real-time responsiveness and streamline the amount of data transferred. This includes deploying AWS managed hardware and software to locations outside of AWS regions and even beyond AWS Outpost. We built the AWS Snow Family for customers that need to run operations in austere non-data center environments and in locations where there's lack of consistent network connectivity. We offer a number of physical devices and capacity points with built-in computing capabilities. The Snow Family service started with AWS Snowball, a secure, ruggedized, suitcase-sized shippable device that can hold up to 42 or 72 terabytes of storage, and it weighs less than 50 pounds, which meets OSHA requirements for carry-on luggage. You could use multiple Snowball devices to move petabytes of data, and it's super simple to use. You can order one through our online console, we'll ship it to your site, you hook it up to your network and start transferring data, and when your job's finished, you ship the Snowball back to AWS, and we put the data back into an S3 bucket of your choice. They're also designed to be secure and tamper-resistant. Snowball can hold a decent chunk of data, but we also heard from some of our customers that we needed even more capacity for data center migrations and situations where you need to move large amounts of data in the hundreds of terabytes or petabyte or even exabyte range. So we developed AWS Snowmobile, which is a 45-foot ruggedized shipping container that customers can use to move vast amounts of data. An example of Snowmobile is Digital Globe, now a division of Maxar, the world's leading providing of high-resolution Earth imagery, and they moved their entire 17-year imagery into AWS in just 4 weeks using Snowmobile. And customers were thrilled with the new Snowball service, so we started to hear requests from something else, and that's getting localized compute into harsh and remote environments and places where there's poor internet connectivity, to take workloads and applications to run them closer, core AWS services and applications and compute to run it closer to where they are out in the field. So we developed Snowball Edge. Snowball Edge, like Snowball, has a lot of capacity, 80 terabytes, but it also really beefs up the computing capabilities. So that kind of wraps up today's presentation. So we talked about some of the challenges with on-premises storage, how AWS can help with fully managed cloud offerings to help reduce the operational overhead, reduce your TCO, and simplify your file environments. We want to help reduce having to migrate your data every 3 to 5 years by refreshing your hardware. We looked at our fully managed Linux and Windows offerings, Amazon Elastic File System and Amazon FSX for Windows File Server. And then we talked about some common ways to migrate data. Again, that's AWS DataSync for transferring data real time at highly parallel speeds and a fully managed copy tool. And then we talked about our Snow family of services for moving vast amounts of data, hundreds of terabytes, petabytes, even exabytes of data in the case of our Snowmobile product. So we hope this was valuable information. If you want to learn more, we have a lot on our website, obviously. And then we have some training courses. We have 45 free digital courses and classroom offerings located at aws.training/storage, as well as instructional offerings with AWS experts that you could sign up for as well. So thank you for listening to today's presentation, and please have a good day.